The day my world fell apart, it didn't come with a bang. It came with a dry rustle of paper. I was sitting in a stuffy lawyer's office, the air thick with the scent of old books and unspoken resentments. My father had passed away 2 weeks earlier. Across the polished mahogany table sat his third wife, Isabella. She was dabbing a perfectly dry eye with a silk handkerchief, a performance of grief that was as fake as the pearls around her neck. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Peterson, who I'd known since I was a boy, cleared his throat. He looked at me with a flicker of pity, and that's when I knew. To my beloved wife Isabella, he read, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, stocks, and personal effects. He continued reading the legal jargon, but the words blurred into a dull hum in my ears. The entirety of his estate. Everything. The house I grew up in. The small trust my mother had left for me, which had been absorbed into his main accounts. The business my grandfather had built from nothing. All of it, handed over to a woman he had known for less than 5 years. And then came the final twist of the knife. Mr. Peterson paused, adjusted his glasses, and read the last line. To my son Alex, I leave my sincerest hope that he learns the value of respect and family. For his continued insolence and disrespect towards my wife, he is hereby intentionally and fully disinherited. A quiet gasp escaped Isabella's lips. She turned to me, her face a mask of sorrowful surprise. Oh, Alex, she whispered. I told him not to. I begged him. I just stared at her. The lie was so blatant, so perfectly delivered, it was almost impressive. Begged him. She was the one who had poisoned him against me. Drop by venomous drop, until he saw me not as his son, but as an enemy. My blood ran cold, but not from shock. It was the chilling calm of pure, undiluted rage. She thought she had won. She thought it was over. But she didn't know my secret. She didn't know about the day I stood in my grandfather's study, a boy of 15, and unknowingly became the ghost that would one day come to haunt her. My father wasn't always the man who could be so easily swayed. Before Isabella, he was just Dad. He taught me how to fish at the lake behind our old house, how to change a tire, how to stand up for myself. After my mom passed away, it was just the two of us for a long time. We were a team. He was my hero. His second marriage was brief and forgettable. A rebound that ended amicably. He was lonely. I understood that. But then came Isabella. She was a hurricane in a designer dress. Younger than him by 20 years, with a dazzling smile and eyes that seemed to see the value of everything they landed on. At first I tried to like her. For my father's sake. He was so happy, so alive again. He'd laugh at her jokes, buy her extravagant gifts, and look at her with an adoration that bordered on worship. I saw her for what she was from the start, a predator. She had the uncanny ability to say the cruelest things with the sweetest smile. It started small. Alex, honey, those old photos of your mother are a little dreary, don't you think? Let's freshen this place up. And down came the pictures. Then it was my visits. Oh, your father is so tired today, Alex. He needs his rest. She became the gatekeeper to my own dad. Our weekly dinners became monthly. Then they stopped altogether. When I did see him, she was always there, clinging to his arm, steering the conversation, answering for him. She would twist my words. I'd ask about the business, concerned about a new venture he'd mentioned. Later she would tell him, Alex was questioning your judgment again, darling. He thinks you're losing your touch. I'd offer to help around the house, fix a leaky faucet. She'd sigh dramatically later that evening. I think Alex feels we can't manage on our own. He pities us. The final nail in the coffin was an argument over the family business. My grandfather had started it. My father had grown it. And I had always assumed I would one day lead it. It was my legacy. Isabella convinced my father to sell off a major profitable division to a competitor she just happened to have connections with. I confronted him, not with anger, but with genuine concern. Dad, this is a mistake. Granddad would never have sold that division. It's the heart of the company. He was in his study. Isabella stood behind his chair, her hand resting on his shoulder, like a queen with her king. Your grandfather isn't here, Alex, my father said, his voice cold. And you don't understand the complexities of modern business. I understand that you're selling our family's history for a quick payout. I shot back. my frustration boiling over. Isabella chose that moment to sigh. See, darling, the disrespect. He has no faith in you. My father's face hardened. He stood up, his eyes blazing with a fury I'd never seen directed at me. Isabella is my wife, he boomed. She supports me. All you do is question and criticize. If you can't respect her, you can't respect me. Maybe you need to learn what it's like to have nothing before you can appreciate what you were given. He pointed to the door. Get out. I was stunned. Dad, get out of my house. That was the last time I spoke to him. I tried calling, but he never picked up. I sent letters, but I'm sure Isabella threw them away. A year later, he had a sudden heart attack. He was gone, and I was left with nothing but a broken heart, and the echo of his angry words. Sitting in that lawyer's office, watching Isabella play the grieving widow, I felt all the sorrow curdle into a single focused thought: revenge. Not a loud, messy revenge. A quiet, patient and complete one. She had taken my father, my inheritance, and my past. I was going to take her future. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Isabella looked up at me, her fake sympathy ready. Alex, I am so sorry. I looked her dead in the eye. No, you're not, I said, my voice flat. But you will be. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. The first phase of my plan was simple: do nothing. I had to let her believe she had won. I had to let her get comfortable, arrogant, and careless. I got a simple apartment and a job at a logistics company. I sold my car and took the bus. From the outside, I was exactly what the will intended me to be: a disinherited son, humbled and broken. I let the world see me as a failure. Meanwhile, Isabella began her reign. The local society pages were filled with her. Grieving widow Isabella Thorne makes generous donation. Isabella Thorne hosts lavish charity gala. She redecorated the house, gutting my father's old study and turning it into her personal yoga sanctuary. She sold his beloved vintage car collection and bought a bright pink Bentley. She was systematically erasing every trace of him, of my mother, of our family, and with every news article, every photo of her smiling in a new diamond necklace, my resolve hardened. She was spending the money like it was infinite, which to her, it probably seemed to be. But I knew something she didn't. The bulk of my father's wealth wasn't money he had earned himself. It was generational wealth, passed down from my grandfather, Richard Thorne. And my grandfather was a man who did not suffer fools. This brings me back to that day when I was 15. It was a sweltering summer afternoon. I was supposed to be at the lake, but my dad told me I needed to come with him to my grandfather's house. It was important. My grandfather was a formidable man. He was old, his hands gnarled by arthritis, but his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. He ran his business and his family with a firm but fair hand. He loved my father, but he wasn't blind to his flaws. He knew my father had a soft spot for a pretty face and a tendency to be too trusting. We went to his study. It smelled of leather and pipe tobacco. Waiting there were my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Hayes, and the family's longtime groundskeeper, a quiet, sturdy man named Arthur. My grandfather looked at me. Alex, he said, his voice a low rumble. I need you to do something for me. I need you to watch and remember. Mr. Hayes laid a single sheet of paper on the desk. It was an addendum to his will. A codicil. I have my will, my grandfather explained, looking from me to my father. It leaves everything to you, Robert, as is right, but I'm adding a condition, an insurance policy you could say. He tapped the paper. This codicil states that the core of the Thorne family assets, the business, the primary residence, and the investment portfolio I established, must pass down the direct bloodline. It can be managed by a spouse, it can be lived off of, but it cannot be willed away from the bloodline. Upon your death, Robert, it must pass to your son, Alex, and upon his death, to his children. It is to remain a Thorne legacy, protected from outside influences. He gave my father a long, hard look. Do you understand, Robert? My father looked a little embarrassed, but he nodded. I understand, Dad. Good, my grandfather said. Then he looked at me and Arthur. I need 2 witnesses, people who are loyal to this family. Arthur has been with us for 40 years, and you, Alex, You are the future of this family. I want you to sign as the second witness, so you never forget that this legacy belongs to you." I was just a kid. I didn't grasp the full weight of it, but I did as he asked. I signed my name, my teenage scrawl looking clumsy next to the elegant script of the others. Arthur signed after me. Mr. Hayes notarized it, made a single copy, and handed the original to my grandfather. "This original," my grandfather said, "is going somewhere safe, somewhere only I know. The copy, Mr. Hayes will keep in his vault. It is done." My father never spoke of it again. I think he was ashamed that his own father felt the need to protect the family fortune from him. Over the years, it faded into a distant memory. A strange afternoon, in a stuffy room. My grandfather passed away a few years later. His lawyer, Mr. Hayes, retired and moved away shortly after. My father inherited everything, and life went on. The codicil was forgotten, by everyone it seemed, except me. After my father disinherited me, that memory came roaring back. Did the codicil still exist? Was it legally binding? My father's will was a direct contradiction to it. This was the heart of my plan. This was my weapon. For a full year, I lived quietly. I watched Isabella burn through money. I gathered every article, every photo. I needed to build a case not just in law, but in character. I needed to show the world who she was. My first step was to find my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Hayes. It took me weeks of searching online, calling law firms, and chasing dead ends. I finally found him in a sleepy retirement community in Arizona. I flew there on a budget airline, my heart pounding. What if he didn't remember? What if he'd destroyed the copy? He was old, much older than I remembered, but his mind was still sharp. When I introduced myself, his eyes lit up with recognition. I told him the whole story. He listened patiently, nodding. When I finished, he smiled a thin, knowing smile. "Your grandfather was a very wise man," he said. "He saw this coming a mile away. He always said your father had a good heart, but a weak will when it came to charismatic women." "The codicil," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you still have the copy?" He stood up, walked over to a small fireproof safe in the corner of his living room, and spun the dial. He pulled out a dusty file, and from it, a single yellowed envelope. He handed it to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. There it was, a photocopy of the document I had signed all those years ago. My grandfather's powerful signature, my father's, Arthur the groundskeeper's, and my own, messy, teenage signature. "It's ironclad," Mr. Hayes said. "Your grandfather's instructions were very specific. This codicil supersedes any subsequent will made by your father regarding the designated family assets. Your father's will can only dispose of assets he acquired himself, outside of the inheritance, which, knowing his spending habits, and Isabella's, I imagine isn't much." I felt a surge of triumph so powerful it almost knocked me over. "What's the next step?" "The next step," he said, "is finding the other witness, Arthur. His testimony will be invaluable, and you need a good, aggressive lawyer. I know just the man in your city. His name is Daniel Petrov. He eats people like Isabella for breakfast." Finding Arthur was harder. He had retired years ago, and being a private man, had left no forwarding address. I went back to the old family estate, now Isabella's palace. I parked down the street, and just watched. I saw new gardeners, new staff, no one from my father's time. I started digging into old employee records, which wasn't easy. I eventually found a pension record, with an address for a sister of his in a small town a few hours away. I drove there, my hope dwindling. I found the sister, a kind, elderly woman. She told me Arthur had passed away 6 months ago. My heart sank into my stomach. It felt like the world had been pulled out from under me. Without the second witness, it was just my word and a photocopy against Isabella's team of high-priced lawyers. They would shred me. I thanked her, and was about to leave, defeated, when she said, "He always thought the world of your grandfather, you know. He kept a box of things from his time at the estate, mementos. He told me, if anyone from the Thorne family ever came asking, I should give it to them." She disappeared into a back room, and came back with a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside were a few old photographs, a small medal for 25 years of service, and an old leather-bound journal. I spent the next 2 days reading that journal. It was mostly about his garden, the weather, the changing seasons on the estate. But then I found it. An entry dated the day after we signed the codicil. It read, Mr. Thorne Sr. did a strange thing today. He had me and young Alex witness a paper. He said it was to protect the family. He said he was worried Mr. Robert would be tricked one day by a pretty face with greedy eyes. He made me promise to remember it. He said my loyalty was to the Thorne blood, not just to whoever was living in the main house. I gave him my word. I will keep it. It wasn't a sworn affidavit, but it was something. It was corroboration. It was the voice of a loyal man from beyond the grave. I took the copy of the codicil and Arthur's journal to Daniel Petrov, the lawyer Mr. Hayes had recommended. He was a shark in a tailored suit. He read everything, his face impassive. When he was done, he looked up at me. She's not going to know what hit her, he said, with a grin. We're not just going to get your inheritance back. We're going to strip her of every last dime she took. Petrov's plan was brilliant and cruel. We wouldn't just file a lawsuit. That was too simple. We were going to let Isabella trap herself. He explained that under the terms of the codicil, she was technically only a temporary steward of the assets. By selling off the car collection and the division of the company, she had already violated her duties. Every extravagant purchase, every vacation, every donation made in her own name was a misuse of funds that were never truly hers. For the next 6 months, we worked in the shadows. We hired a forensic accountant, who through legal and discreet means, began to track Isabella's every transaction. She was liquidating stocks, moving money into offshore accounts. She was preparing to cut and run if she ever needed to. She was building her escape route, not knowing that every step she took was leading her deeper into our trap. Finally, the day came. Petrov decided we were ready. He didn't serve her with a lawsuit. He sent her a simple, polite letter, inviting her and her lawyer to a meeting to discuss a matter pertaining to the estate of the late Robert Thorne. He made it sound like a routine loose end. She took the bait. She arrived at Petrov's office, looking bored and annoyed, her own lawyer trailing behind her like a puppy. She sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at her watch. Let's make this quick, shall we? I have a fitting at 2. I was sitting on the other side of the conference table with Petrov. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. A flicker of unease crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a condescending smile. Alex, I'm surprised to see you. I hope you're doing well, all things considered. I'm doing just fine, Isabella, I said calmly. Petrov slid a single folder across the table. Please, take a look. Her lawyer opened it. His face went from confident to confused to pale. He slid the papers in front of Isabella. It was the copy of the codicil. She glanced at it, then laughed. A shrill, ugly sound. What is this? Some kind of joke? A forgery? My husband's will was perfectly clear. This is pathetic, Alex. I almost feel sorry for you. It's no forgery, Petrov said, his voice like ice. It was witnessed by my client, and by the groundskeeper Arthur Mills. A groundskeeper who is conveniently dead, I presume. Her lawyer sneered. He is, Petrov said smoothly, but his memory isn't. He then slid a second folder across the table. It contained a certified copy of Arthur's journal entry. Isabella's lawyer read it. The color drained completely from his face this time. He whispered something to her. Her smile finally vanished. This is ridiculous, she stammered. A crazy old man's diary. No court will accept this. Perhaps, Petrov conceded. But it paints a picture, doesn't it? A picture of a man trying to protect his legacy from a predator. But you're right. We need more than that. He leaned forward. Let's talk about the last 18 months, shall we? Let's talk about the assets you've liquidated. The company division, the car collection, the stocks, all of which were specifically protected under the terms of this codicil. He then slid a third, much thicker folder onto the table. This is a full report from our forensic accountant. It details every dollar you have moved, spent and hidden. It shows a clear pattern of misappropriating funds that were never legally yours to control. You see, Isabella, you weren't an owner. You were a trustee, and you have been a very, very bad trustee. She stared at the report, her eyes wide with panic. She was finally starting to understand. She wasn't just going to lose the inheritance. She was in serious legal trouble. "We have two options," Petrov continued, his voice low and dangerous. "Option A. We go to court. We present the codicil, the journal, and this financial report. The press will have a field day. Gold-digging widow defrauds grieving family. Your name will be mud. The court will not only strip you of every asset belonging to the Thorne estate, but they will likely order you to pay back what you've already spent. You'll be left with nothing but a mountain of debt and public humiliation." He paused, letting the words sink in. Isabella was breathing heavily, her mask completely shattered. She looked like a cornered animal. "Or," Petrov said, "there is option B. You sign this settlement. It states that you acknowledge the validity of the codicil. You will immediately vacate the family home. You will relinquish control of all Thorne assets. In return for your full cooperation, my client will not press charges for fraud. He will allow you to keep the personal gifts my father gave you during his lifetime. Your jewelry, your clothes, your ridiculous pink car. You walk away with what you came with, plus a few trinkets. You disappear, and we never see you again." Her lawyer was frantically whispering in her ear. He knew they were beaten. He knew this was the best deal she would ever get. Isabella looked at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. This was the real her. The venomous, greedy creature I had always known was hiding behind the sweet smile. "You," she hissed. "You did this." "No," I said, leaning forward for the first time. "You did this to yourself. You got greedy. You underestimated my father's family, and you underestimated me." She stared at me for a long moment, her chest rising and falling. Then, with a shaking hand, she picked up the pen and signed the settlement. She didn't say another word. She just stood up, her composure utterly gone, and walked out of the room, her lawyer scurrying after her. The silence she left behind was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It wasn't a moment of cheering or celebration. I just sat there in that quiet conference room, feeling the weight of the last 2 years lift from my shoulders. It was over. I had won. The aftermath was quiet. Isabella, true to the agreement, vanished. The house was mine again. The business was mine. The fortune was mine. Walking through the front door of my childhood home was strange. She had changed so much of it, but the bones were the same. I spent weeks just undoing what she had done. I put my mother's pictures back on the wall. I turned the yoga sanctuary back into my father's study, filling it with his books and the things he had loved. It wasn't a happy ending. I had my legacy back, but I didn't have my father. In a way, I had lost him twice. Once to Isabella's manipulation, and a second time to his death. Vindicating my grandfather's wishes, and taking back what was mine, didn't bring him back. It didn't heal the wound of his betrayal. But as I stood in his study, looking at an old photo of him and me at the lake, laughing, I finally understood. My revenge wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about honor. I honored my grandfather's foresight. I honored my mother's memory. And in a strange way, I honored the man my father was before he got lost. I took back our family's story from the woman who tried to steal it, and burned the pages. The fortune is a responsibility, not a toy. I won't make the same mistakes they did. I will build on my grandfather's legacy, and I will make sure the Thorne name once again stands for integrity and strength, not weakness and greed. My father cut me out of his will, but in the end, I was the one who fulfilled my grandfather's. And that is a victory that no amount of money can buy. Thank you for listening to my story. It's amazing how one secret, kept for years, can change everything. Have you ever been underestimated? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who loves a story of justice being served. Your support means the world. See you next time.